Yikes. Ready?
Wow.
Call to order the Planning Commission. It's regular meeting. What? No. She's. Okay. Am I good? Today is Wednesday, March 24th, 2021. Can we have a roll call, please?
Margaret Bowles, Katie Souls,
Parnell Quinn. You're last.
Catherine Trotter.
Gene Walter.
That's how the mayor does it.
There's
This is
Bob.
not the mayor.
Are you here?
You didn't notice.
You gotta unmute yourself. And Sam, you're still muted also. Oh.
Sam Brewer, and I couldn't unmute earlier.
Okay.
Bob may be stuck too.
No, can you hear me now? I just got it unmuted, but I was clicking on it several times and it didn't want to unmute.
Yeah, just stay there.
Can you say your name, Bob? Sam?
Bob Ganussi.
Bob?
Yes, this is Bob Ganussi.
Thank you. Let's see. Do I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? What about a motion to approve the previous minutes from the October 28th meeting? Wow, it's been a while.
That's what I was saying. It's been a
So
while.
I move to approve. Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Whoops. Opposed? All right. I guess I'm going to turn it over to.
Yeah, I
Our
think
fearless
first we wanted
leader.
to introduce our interim town manager, Wes Levanchi, to our planning commission. For those of you that haven't met Wes yet, I think Wes has met almost everyone except for Margaret. So we were gonna have just Wes introduce himself and say a few words.
So thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure to serve here. I have had the pleasure of briefly talking with Gene. What was it? A few weeks ago, I think it was.
Geez, it might even be 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah,
It's been a while.
yeah. You were gracious to stop by and make the introduction. So it's been a privilege serving here. Notwithstanding the guy next to me, but that's a whole different
That was
conversation. So,
coming.
but no, seriously, it's been good. So, but one of the things that's kind of prompted tonight as discussion is, and Parnell's been rightly so kind of pestering me to say, hey, Wes, we do a lot of stuff here at times because we're either, hey, this is the process, we got to go through this and approve this or review this. He says, sometimes we're putting out fires, we're rushing this fire, rushing that fire, but have we done anything that's deliberate in the sense of forward thinking about, well, what do we want Fraser to look like, or what are the kinds of things that we should be thinking about as a planning department, as a planning commission, as staff, and so he's kind of brought that to our attention. So Catherine and I had a good chance to engage a couple different times over the last couple of weeks and talk about it. She worked, I take zero credit for the staff report. She worked hard in pulling together the staff report. And I think I peeked at it briefly, but she pulled it together. But one of the things we thought about was, what if we just start by just kind of acknowledging what all the documents are that we have that are useful planning tools, and when they came into existence. Some of them very, very recently. Some of them probably need a little TLC too. But and so just kind of putting that out just for context. And then I know a guy who does a bunch of work like on comp stuff. Anyway, I pestered him to give me a pro bono, just like, hey, take a look at our stuff and just give me your eyeballs up on it and tell me what you think from your chair on the outside looking in, what we should do. Because one of the things I talked about, well, where do you start? And he's like, well, Wes, you can start, in a lot of places you can quickly spend a lot of money without really having a target in mind. He said it really helps to have a target in mind. Like, what's your goal? What do you start with? The why? Why would we do this? What are we trying to accomplish? What does that look like? And then he said that can kind of help And that way, if you do deploy staff resources or make a recommendation to deploy staff resources and make a recommendation to spend money, hopefully we're targeted in what that looks like, as opposed to, kind of stumbling through trying to figure out what that might look like. So anyway, I hope that goes kind of hand in glove with what you're kind of got in your mind. Catherine, I know, is going to say a few words, and I think we just kind of turn it to you, Parnell, if you're okay with that, to
Yep,
talk a little
sounds
bit about what your
What's on my
passion is.
mind and what I'm thinking?
Well, that's a short answer.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to recap some of the studies and reports that we've been involved with recently. So back in 2017, we did the Downtown Fraser Strategic Plan with community builders. We had some technical assistance funding from those folks. And, we put,
And that's this, right?
no, that's our resiliency.
Okay.
So
That's where I was getting confused
this is
between the two.
what was in
Okay.
there. So there was a link to the Downtown Strategic Plan. There was also, as you're all aware, the Fraser River Corridor Master Plan that was also done in 2018. There was the 2016 Town of Fraser Needs and Development Study, Housing Needs and Development Study. We did a Community Trails Plan in 2014, and the document that Katie's holding up was our resiliency planning document that we received technical assistance for. That was done in 17, and our comprehensive plan hasn't been updated since 2010. And previously to that, it was 2003, and both of those updates to the comp plan were done in-house. So I'm sure you guys didn't go back and read all these, front to back, but I will say, as it relates to the downtown strategic plan, that really helped us get quite a bit of CDOT funding. And so we received the Safe Routes to School grant and the HSIP grant from CDOT. With our matching funds, we put about $1 million into the downtown that really helped with, the main thing was access management, an additional crosswalk, and also really increased the curb appeal to downtown. We also, because of that strategic plan, we got a DOLA grant that helped us move forward with a code overhaul, and that was done in 18. So there are definitely some other recommendations in there that we need, to move forward with, but we have, it's baby steps moving forward with some of those recommendations. So the Fraser River Corridor Master Plan, we didn't get our GOCO grant, but we did get the DOLA grant, and we were hoping that project would have taken place last year, but because of COVID, it was pushed off, and we're hoping those RFPs and invitations to bid for the extension of infrastructure and a new restroom facility out by the Lions Ponds will be happening this year. So that's
The
some
whole project?
progress. I'm sorry?
Do you think the whole project's going to happen this summer?
The project, as it relates to extending the infrastructure
Yep.
and building a bathroom.
Cool.
So that's going to happen this year.
Great.
The GOCO grant that we applied for, we did meet with staff and we restructured that based on the peer review comments and the staff comments. And unfortunately, COVID hit, and then they kind of changed their grant application and moved it more towards resiliency. So our plan to resubmit that in a form that we thought would get us more points. I think we missed being awarded by like 2 points. It was kind of a bummer. But I think it's really important to move forward with the Lions project because we had so much community engagement. Everyone was so happy with that. And we need something to happen like as soon as possible. We are moving forward with some of the recommendations in the housing and development study. Antoinette, can you just say a few words about the deed restriction program?
Sure. So we launched the deed restriction program. It was the end of last year. Currently, we don't have any yet, but we have received a few applications that haven't worked out. So do you want me to talk about how the program works?
Maybe just,
Yeah, that'd be
like
great.
101 real quick, just
Okay.
so, because I wanted to, make these guys aware of the things that are going on right now. So that would be helpful, I think.
Okay. So
Thank you.
The way the deed restriction program works is you can own a house currently, you can be purchasing a house, you can be building a house. We can go with any of those options. The home does need to be located within the Fraser Valley Metropolitan Recreation District boundaries. And in order to qualify, one person in the household must work in Grand County at least 32 hours a week, year round. And what the deed restriction is so you come, you say, I think the deed restriction on my home is worth X amount of dollars. That comes to the board reviews it and decides, based on how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, what's, maybe the condition or the age of the home. Is it a house? Is it a condo? They kind of look at kind of the gamut of everything to make that decision. And what it is that the homeowner gets that dollar amount in exchange for that deed restriction. That deed restriction goes with that home in perpetuity. So no matter who owns it, it will always be, Fraser will always own the deed to this home. And in exchange, that homeowner gets the money for the program, and they can spend that money on whatever they want. There's no requirement of how they spend that money. They could take a vacation, they could use it for a down payment, you could use it to upgrade your home, really just anything that you want to spend it on. And that we're trying to build with that program housing for our community, for people that actually live and work here. So you can't telecommute and be in this program. You actually physically have to work here for that program.
So may I ask a question? Because you said something I didn't understand. You said the house, the deed belongs to Fraser.
She
What
meant
is
deed
the
restriction?
The
It's
deed
not the deed
restriction.
to the house.
Not
Yeah.
the correct.
It's the deed restriction. It's
okay?
held by the town of Fraser.
And the restriction says
It's basically the deed. So the town is basically giving you money for that deed restriction, and by giving that deed restriction, to the town, or the town purchasing it from you, you agree to the terms within that deed restriction.
such as
So, like, you have to live here.
yeah.
You have to work in this community.
If you sell the house,
If you sell the house, it stays with that house. You can't short-term rental the property. It's really to create, there's just criteria that you have to meet in order to qualify for the program.
Like, here's an example. You could apply for the deed restriction program to build, not everyone could, but we could, an accessory dwelling on your property that is restricted specifically for local workforce housing, correct?
The deed would be retained for the entire property, not just an ADU.
So if we went to sell our house would have to be bought by a local.
by
So-
someone who's willing to live within the terms of the restrictions.
Correct. And the person occupying the house doesn't have to be the owner of the house. It could be rented to somebody that meets the requirements of the program.
And it doesn't take into account people that were workforce that retire.
We did take that into account.
And is that part of
That
that?
is a part of the program.
Okay,
And I forget the
I
exact.
didn't read that in there yet.
Yeah, you have to have lived here in the county, and there is a number of years. I want to say it's somewhere between 2 and 4 years before you retired that you were a part of the workforce, so your home can continue to be in that deed restriction.
And it is taxable. That money that you get is taxable income.
The town would 1099 you as if it was income.
And so what are we talking about? Like $5,000 or?
It depends on the house.
I see. Okay.
I would say, depending on the number of bedrooms, I would say that could range anywhere from $10,000 up to, I don't know, $60,000-$70,000. Again, the board is going to take into account kind of all these different factors of the home as to what they feel that the deed restriction is worth. Now, my guess is over time, as the program evolves, there'll start to be more of a rhyme and rhythm to exactly kind of a more like, okay, we've done 20 deed restrictions. It kind of looks like the dollar amount kind of works out to be here, but we're just not quite there yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's no maximum amount on what you could sell your house for. It doesn't affect what you can, so it's like real estate. You have a buyer and a seller, they meet together and they agree on a price. Now the pool of people that would be willing to buy a deed restricted house is smaller, so that can affect you in that way. But it doesn't mean the value of your home will or will not change. None of us can really say what the future of the real estate market is.
And you said it's the Fraser Valley Rec District, so that's top of Red Dirt Hill,
Correct.
right? So somebody could potentially apply if they're buying a house for themselves, or if they're buying a house for workforce housing rental,
Correct.
Right.
they could apply.
Correct. Yeah. And we expanded those boundaries because within a town of Fraser, obviously housing is just limited. There's not a lot of inventory.
It's limited everywhere.
Yeah, this is true.
Which is why we partly here.
Right, that's why we're partly here. That's
Okay.
exactly it.
And the program is mirrored after the Vail and Deed program. They have a really great website, and we're working on kind of incorporating some of those frequently asked questions into our website on that. They've really been instrumental in helping us get this set up. They've come here with their team and their mayor and their board members, and we've gone over there. So they've been extremely helpful, the folks from Vail.
So you said you've had a couple applications, but nothing's come through?
Correct. One of them ended up in the end not qualifying. They didn't meet the qualifications of the work requirements. Another one wanted to purchase a home, but they had applied early on and then they missed the opportunity because we really were still just kind of launching the program. So they missed their window to try to purchase. There was another one that's hoping to build and they're going to reapply down the road, but for whatever reason, weren't able to build at this time, but they're hoping to down the road. So there's been a kind of a different reasons why it hasn't worked out so far. And that town board did put $500,000 towards the program last year, which wasn't spent because we didn't really launch the program in time. So we could roll that money over to this year, and hopefully every year we'll continue to be able to add more money to this program. And currently it's just coming from the general fund.
Thank you.
And thinking of deed restriction on that resiliency, in the resiliency document on page 22, under workforce and attainable housing policy recommendations, they do recommend that we have permanent deed restrictions that do not expire on all affordable and attainable homes, whether created by annexation, inclusion, private or public sector, nonprofit sectors, or otherwise. And they also recommend that our land use code provide for inclusionary zoning and set minimum affordable housing requirements for annexation. I don't think we have that yet.
No, we don't have that.
So,
I mean, we did have an impact fee that was associated with the building permit.
right, okay. That's
And
fine.
so that was in place for a number of years, but the board ended up repealing that because they felt like the people that were, this is probably kind of maybe pre-Rendezvous and Grand Park build out. But, you know, before that, the people that were building in Fraser were building to kind of provide homes for locals. And so they were getting dinged on that. And I think that was why the board
Right.
repealed that.
So this is more of zoning.
So requiring like a
For-
certain number of units in
It's
a
on-
development to be deed restricted.
Yeah. For, said requirements for annexations.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something for us to consider,
Mhm.
you know, because that was something that wasn't spelled out clearly enough in the past, and has left with us with some variables and
Mm-hmm.
some things that weren't addressed. So I think that's something that we should look at. It's a recommendation from them.
So a couple other things that we're kind of looking at right now is we had a presentation from DOLA, Department of Local Affairs, regarding the Main Street program. And Sarah and I have kind of spent some time with those guys, and it's something that we've been talking about. I've been talking about with the town for quite some time now, but we never really got much traction. And I think the traction is now. This is a great step forward. There was a 5-minute video link in the briefing that I hope you guys listened to, but I mean, it's really an opportunity to provide more funding mechanisms for, increasing the vitality of downtown. And it seems like now is a good time to move in that direction. I think I wanted to have Sarah kind of briefly touch on this, and Sarah's also the staff liaison for the EDAC, Economic Development Advisory Committee, and also the Public Arts Committee. So I wanted her to kind of give an update of the projects that EDAC and PAC are doing, and also maybe a few minutes on the Main Street program, if you would please, Sarah.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Was everybody able to watch the video on the Main Street program?
Yes.
Yes.
So like Catherine said, she's been pushing for this for a long time, and finally now, like we felt we had some traction. So we're gonna start moving forward with the program. PAC and EDAC have been working on some projects that really overlap with this program. For example, wayfinding, new banners for the streets, basic revitalization stuff that is pretty low hanging fruit. But like, I feel like this program will give us direction and assistance too. So it works out really well with both of those committees because it does overlap with a lot of the projects. And I feel like some of them are pretty large and kind of need some direction from somebody, not me, because I don't know anything about setting up wayfinding. So I think the people can help with the projects that they're working on. Right now, I'm setting up a steering committee. I'll be the manager of the program. And then there's 2 members of EDAC and 1 from PAC. And it would be really great if we could get somebody from the Planning Commission on the steering committee. So I don't know if we have any volunteers tonight, but it's about 15 to 20 hours a month. That would be the time commitment. And then just being very passionate about making the downtown look beautiful and our streets.
Do you have some kind of a schedule yet for those meetings?
No, we haven't even applied for the program yet. You need to get the committee or like the steering committee together first, and then you work on the application, submit it, and then we can go from there.
This is Bob Ganussi. Can I ask you a question, Sarah?
Sure.
And through the documents and viewing the video that was provided, I had 2 things that struck me. One was I didn't get a sense of what the cost was going to be for us to participate in this Main Street program, because there was never any mention of, if we participate in it, is there some financial commitment that we have to make to this Main Street organization?
No, that's the great thing. There is no financial cost. So it's kind of a win-win. They also help you with grant writing. And, you have this whole network of people that have gone through the program already and that are currently going through it. So yeah, there is no cost to us. We have to do a quarterly report for them. And then once a year, they'll come and visit the town to see what we've actually been doing. But it's a small team. It's a team of about 3 people. So, I mean, they're fairly involved with the communities that they work with. So they do know what's happening.
Okay, well, that answers one of my questions. And the other one was, because this all kind of got put in a package, I wasn't sure whether one depended on another, which is to say the visioning and the revisiting some of these strategic plan documents that we've created in the past, that whole thing, and this memo that was written to our interim town manager by, I guess, this is the friends you said you called a favor in on. So I also, it reads kind of like a proposal, except there's no cost involved in it. It's right. Just the recommendations for how you might proceed. So the second question I had was, how interlinked are these two? Could we do Main Street without doing visioning and all this other stuff? Or do you have to do both at the same time?
Within that program, within the Colorado Main Street program, depending on the projects that you're going to be working on, you'll be going through a process. So for example, like I said, if it's wayfinding, like there's going to be a process that you go through. Maybe we've done some of that work already. There has been like all the documents that Catherine provided, like we've done a lot of the work already. So that's going to be a great help once we do get into this program, because a lot of the heavy lifting for some of the projects has already been done. So it does overlap really well. And that's why she wanted me to come talk about this, because, it does, it can help with a lot of questions that you guys have. Like, what are our plans? Like, what is downtown going to look like? What are we doing? So I think this program aligns really well with everything that we're thinking about and the future.
But to kind of piggyback on that, Bob, just a little bit. So, but you can move forward with your Main Street program without having to engage or go down a path of this other example. So whether you cherry pick and pick up some or none of these plans to do anything with, whether you use the sample that's here or not, doesn't mean that you can't do the Main Street program. So as you go through the Main Street program, Sarah's right. Having some of these plans updated will certainly be a benefit to you, but they're not linked. They complement each other, but they're not required. I hope that helps.
Thank you for the clarification.
So when you say have these plans updated, is that work that we're doing? Is that work that staff is doing?
So you don't have to do, so let me
Or
back up. So you don't have to do anything, but as a part of the visioning and as a part of the, how do we move forward? If the planning and zoning board says, hey, we think it may be a benefit to either use one of the current plans we have, dust it off, or to update a plan, then we need to have some discussion about what kind of resources would be.
Or address those
Right.
portions of
We've just put the
plans.
resources or the plans out there to say, these are your current plans. And so if you're going to do some things that Parnell's going to talk about here in a minute, if you're going to do some of that, it may be advantageous to update some of those or not. Maybe it's narrowly focused in a way you don't need to do that. We just can do a one-off and just kind of take care of that. Or no, are we going to step back and look at, and I don't want to, I feel like I'm waiting. I don't mean to wait in his area, but he's got he's got some things around density and strategically, where are we going to put certain kinds of product and that kind of stuff. Well, is that something that we just want to take a look at on a one-off, or do we want to step back and go, well, maybe if we're going to do that, we ought to really roll up our sleeves and work on our comprehensive plan, since it's been 12 or 13 years. If we do that, that's a major undertaking, and that's going to require a lot of my recommendation would be not necessarily do that in-house, have staff kind of help lead the charge, but we're going to need to buckle in resources and commitments, and there's going to be dollars that go with that. I mean, Catherine does like to leave here roughly between 5 and 6 every evening, not show up at 3 a.m. in the morning. So she has a life outside of her, which means we're probably going to try to find some resources to go with that. But, all kind of kidding aside, that's a major undertaking. I think there's even a more foundational question from that is, even before we get to deciding that, is that I think what the proposal, and you don't have to use this is just a sample, but I think what they're suggesting is, before we even jump into that arena saying, hey, let's go down and do our comp plan, do we want to take one step even further back and say, what if we just met and spent some time doing some visioning and talking about what we want Fraser to look like, and what might that look like, and what implications are around that, what are some of the goals around that? And I think that might drive what document you may tackle or you may not tackle. You may go, no. Our sustainability plan's in a great place. Our traffic plan's in a great place, or no, maybe this. And so that kind of helps prioritize which ones you tackle and then where you kind of put your money, because this isn't something we all wake up in 30 days and go, oh, wow, God, that was a great exercise. Oh, glad that's all over. I'm looking for the email that comes to me next year. It just gives me an update on how that's working.
Yeah.
But so there's some real heavy lift is what I'm saying there. But if we're going to do it, let's be intentional around that lift. Let's be intentional with our time. Let's be intentional with our efforts. Let's be intentional with our monies, because we have a goal. There's a specific set of goals that we want to accomplish. And that kind of drives then the front end about where we want to spend our, our Wednesday nights, where staff spends their time, where we spend the town's money. So does that kind of make sense? So,
Yeah.
Anyway, but I feel like so
No,
anything
you're good.
left for Sarah before
We
I,
talked about
okay,
it.
So
Yeah.
Sarah,
Yeah.
Sarah, can you just give like
Sarah?
a super quick, because
I'll
Parnell's,
volunteer.
oh, great.
Sarah.
Katie's volunteering.
Yay, thanks, Katie.
So
We'll touch base. I'm going to be out of town a couple weeks in May.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be a few weeks before we start to get the ball rolling. The application is pretty intensive, so yeah, I'll have to work on that together.
So Parnell's chomping at the bit to talk. Can you just give a super quick
I
summary
got
of
time. I'm not-
EDAC and PAC real quick, so these guys are kind of dialed into what's happening in those groups?
Sure. So PAC is going to town. They are working on the mural festival. The board added some money to that, so we're adding 5 more artists. They're also working on another event. It's kind of piggybacking on Oktoberfest last year that the local breweries did, but it's going to be called Arttoberfest. So it's going to be kind of a combination. It's going to be beer and art, basically. That's kind of in the early stages. The Mural Fest has been going on for 3 years, so we're just trying to enhance that a little bit. There's going to be a concert Saturday night and an artist welcome party Friday. There's a lot of additional stuff that will be happening this year. EDAC's meeting was canceled this week. So they haven't, I presented the Colorado Main Street program to them, and they kicked that around a little bit. Other than that, that's what's going on. I mean, PAC is doing their regular, public art stuff, new sculptures around town, the mural program.
What about super quick, the 501c3?
yes, yeah, good.
So the 501c3 is in existence. Steve, who is the chair of PAC, is also the president of the 501c3, and he's leading the charge on that. I don't go to any of their meetings. He did a brief update on what they were doing. Wes, do you remember what the highlights were of that?
Yeah, so I think what the big emphasis is that he talked about, before they just go out and try to raise millions for a new kind of art center, that they actually start by being deliberately engaging people. And so getting people together to talk about, again, what might this look like? What would be the best path forward? I think they spent a lot of time, he spent some time engaging the folks in Basalt. And there's one other place I'm drawing a blank on, about how they took incremental steps to get there. So I think he's trying to create what those incremental steps look like. And so I think the first ask he's going to ask is just some seed money that begins to look at how do you plan for, how do you think about this kind of project, and how you go about actually getting this kind of thing done. So that was, what else am I missing, Katie?
He had also mentioned looking at the historic church.
That's right.
And ways to utilize that.
That's correct.
For as an art center.
Yep.
In the interim.
That's correct. He did. Thank you. Yep. Sure.
So yeah, we have a proposal. Like we have about 15 grand. We're going to have somebody come look at it and do a little work on the inside to see what it can be used for. The intention is to get more programming in the church. So we need more space. And then there's actually a need for that art center. Because right now the church isn't even being fully used. So they're really working hard to get more programs going. And that way, yeah, there will be a use for that art center. We'll have to build it because we'll just have too much.
And then the last thing I wanted to say before I turn over to Parnell is we've also reached out to the state to help us assist with the floodplain mapping that
right.
still hasn't been
that's
done
good.
in the town of Fraser. And so this, I think, is going to touch on something that Parnell might bring up, and that is Again, it's really important to be proactive and not reactive on some of these redevelopment and revitalization energies. So we need to get those floodplain mapped, and you're not going to get the private investments unless the public invests. And so we would like, we know there's some of those properties have flipped again down by the river. And so we need to get that stuff mapped so that it's easier for these people to come through with the vision that we have in our downtown strategic plan and make that come to reality.
Yeah, we got a really good response. I mean, thanks to Catherine in reaching out to them. Not only did they consider what we had, but they actually extended it over to St. Louis
Creek.
St. Louis Creek.
Yeah.
So they were very receptive in helping us with that update. And again,
I mean, we're going to have to come up with some kind of match,
Right.
But I keep reaching out to them like, hey guys,
it could be some
don't
in-kind
forget
stuff
about
too.
us.
Yeah, it could be some in-kind stuff.
Definitely.
We'll see.
And who's that again?
It's the Colorado Water Conservation Board,
Yep.
CWC.
CB, yeah.
Yeah.
CWCB, and they do this all over the state. So,
Mhm.
and they generally have a pool of money and resources. The match is really about this. I mean, I've dealt with CWCB on other projects. They want a commitment. So they're not asking for a huge amount, but what they want is they want you to have skin in the game, because they feel like the stakeholders that have skin in the game are more likely to see this thing through, take it serious, roll up their sleeves. And so that's what they're looking for. So there'll be an opportunity for us to come back and say, well, I'm going to, use 20 hours of Catherine's time and 10 hours of Russ's time. We're going to do some GIS stuff, blah, blah, blah. And that's our match. And we'll see if they take that or not, So that'll be the kind of activity coming up. But yeah.
But it's the proactive rather than the reactive.
That's correct.
So.
Yep.
Good.
Parnell, you're on.
All right. So the reason I've been asking for a meeting is so we can think forward instead of being a reactionary committee. We're the planning committee. In my mind, a planning committee is supposed to be thinking 3, 10, 15, 100 years out. My friends from China, and I've told Wes this story before, but my friends from China, they think in 1,000-year terms. When they go to do a development, they think 1,000 years out. What will this section of the country be like in 1,000 years? And they have the population densities to go backwards and figure it out. We don't have that, but what we do have is Vale, Breckenridge, Steamboat, Aspen, Telluride. What else is out there? All those little ski towns that have exploded and become something different. And they all have the same problems we have. And it's 50 years later, they still have the same problem, which is employee housing and not enough skilled or good workers for their jobs and not enough good jobs in the town. And so if we don't start thinking about changing the way we do stuff, we're going to end up exactly where we were in 1979. We don't have enough housing. We don't have enough jobs. We don't have enough good jobs, right? So what I'd like us to do as the planning commission is really look at our town. And, we all talked about the pole yard and what could be possible there. It's in a conundrum right now with Dennis Safla and his group. We've got the property across the street that's owned by the family that lives in Mexico, the 10 acres there. We didn't annex in Byers Peak Ranch, which the downside to that really is the county wants 60% open space, where we require somewhere between 10 to 30% open space. So the density out in that section, which, it's a beautiful meadow, I get it. I've lived here my whole life as well. But we would have had more control over what could have been developed there. We could have put a light industrial park with housing above it along the railroad tracks, right? We've kind of missed that opportunity, but we haven't missed all the opportunities in town. And that's what I want to look at, is all the opportunities that we have moving forwards. As much as I like the historical church, that's an ideal spot for something to be put that would be more residential housing for people to live in. Do we need to do it there? Not necessarily, but it's got a big open lot. Down on Easton where I live, in my opinion, I love Barry's building. It's a beautiful building, but it doesn't make it a walking area on that side of the road. When you come down Easton now, you walk across the back of their building. There's no windows there. There's nothing to draw your attention, right? So if that's how everybody builds in the heart of Fraser, you'll never have that walking community that we're looking for. So we need to start thinking ahead of time of how do we want the buildings to work out? How do we want, Eastham to be, and this side of the, before the tracks on the highway over here. How do we want that to function? How many houses do you want in that downtown area so people can live above their work, walk around the town, and they don't need their cars? Right? Denver's gone to a no parking requirements. Breckenridge is looking at no parking requirements. Vale's talking about no parking requirements in their city because they're thinking in 10 years, people will be renting cars or using Ubers and not driving their own vehicles around or having shared vehicles. So I think if we don't take the opportunity to do this now, because if you look at history, the Roaring 20s came after the last pandemic, and we'll be looking at the Roaring 20s. We are going to have a ton of people in Grand County. As you notice, they all came anyway.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, don't
That
come
means
up
more
here
coming.
because you're supposed to stay home. So we saw them all come up, and we have thousands of more people than we're used to, even at this time of year. I mean, spring break, are we at the end of spring breaks? I don't have kids in school anymore, so I get lost. Spring breaks are coming to the end, right? Because, well, that's our school spring break, right? It's like at the end of it. Well, the ski area is still packed. All the skiers lifted their bans because there's so many people wanting to come up and go skiing. So let's just open it up. So there's no more reservations at the ski areas, right? So this town has changed, and it changed in a 9-month period.
It's not just the 9 months, the state of Colorado has been
Right.
growing exponentially.
Absolutely.
for years.
Absolutely. Our prices doubled since 2017. Most homeowners couldn't keep up. Most people that own a business now couldn't change the house if they wanted to, because the house they're living in, if they sold it, there's nothing else they could buy, right? So those are the things that if we're not paying attention, so what I'm talking about doing is, for example, on Eastham, we want a commercial downtown. We want people to be able to walk. So along the roads, you have commercial buildings. Above the commercial, you have 45 feet or 55 feet. I can't remember. I think it's 45 feet there. Height. And instead of limiting it to 4 units, you limit it to 16 to 20 units. You get more 1-bedrooms and studios, and people live in those units. Because most of the people that are going to live in your downtown area are going to be single people that are looking around, trying to figure out where they're going to move. And we have no transitional housing. So with what Clark's building out there in Byers Peak, we may have some transitional housing, but if it keeps going like all the other stuff that he's built, forget the name of it, the stuff on the backside of the railroad track. Yeah, the smaller homes that were they started in the Elk Creek Colleges. They started at 349,000. One person got in there and said, I think I can sell it for 6. Now they're selling for 7 and 8. Right? So, I mean, those were designed, but not restricted. So if we don't,
That's back to this, about
What-
the recommendations about getting those deed restrictions on properties.
well, and allowing people to do higher densities, allowing them to do stuff that's outside of and it's not spot zoning, because I know that's a big issue with planning. It's not a spot zoning. It's here's what we want. We want 200 units in the downtown Fraser area. Where can we put the 200 units? We need 2,000 units to do all of the housing for all the workers in between Red Dirt Hill and here. I'm using numbers. I haven't ran all the numbers yet. But if that's what we need is 2,000 housing units so people can come in as a single person, leave with 3 kids and be able to stay the entire time and have a good life, we have to plan that out for them. If we don't plan it out for them, we're going to be like Vale and Breckenridge. And Vale's ahead of us. They started this deed restricted plan 15 years ago. 15 years ago. So they put some real thought into it. So I just want us to start thinking outside the box on what we allow, and because the boards, and that's one of the reasons I got on the boards, is they've been very anti-density and anti-growth, anti-change, and it's going to change one way or the other.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And we're going to get steamrolled. I mean, I think this year there's developments that never would have sold, that have sold for more than what they're supposed to sell for. And the people are trying to figure out how to squeeze in 2 or 3 extra units to make it work out financially. That's the kind of thing happening. Yep.
How successful is Vale's program been?
From what I understand, it's doing really well because they have jobs where people can afford to buy the houses at an increasing rate. You know, we're starting to see those jobs, so we don't have a lot of them.
And I think aren't they doing condos also over in Vail?
They do everything.
Breckenridge also has a very successful deed restriction program that they've been doing for a long time also. And it's a multifaceted approach that they do. But these towns also have designated income streams to help with that, which we just don't have at this time.
Right.
Which is part of our challenge.
And that's part of thinking forwards, of developing areas where we could have those kind of things. You know, right now to build a new building in Fraser for a commercial building, it takes 18 months to get through planning. And, you know, that's a lot of money to be sitting there on a piece of dirt while you're figuring out your plans and trying to get your business started. So if there's ways that we can come up with a building designs, I'm not saying they're all perfect, but there are some examples out there. But if we come up with building designs and say, this is the type of buildings we want on these sections and these lots, people may say, okay, fine, we'll take the risk, sell off the house, scrape it, and build a bigger building on it. Allowing people to add multiple ADUs to their backyard instead of just having junk sitting in them, especially if they have an alleyway. That could be something that adds it. It allows them, but it's difficult to get them. You still have to buy a full or partial water tap. You got to get in the service lines. You got to get in all the little details that add up. Also, that little ADU goes from being a $40,000 project to a $120,000 project, and people say, I can't afford to do that because I can't make the rent work. And then you have an ADU that's renting for $1,700 or $1,800 instead of renting for $600 and $700.
Yeah, I mean, the accessory dwelling unit is a use by right in all districts except one, which is the lowest density. And the plant investment fee for that is 0.25 of a normal, which is a huge deal, you know? And also that service rate carries on at the 0.25 rate.
Right.
So,
That's an incentive.
but, you know, we've had a couple of them.
Right. We've had 3.
We don't have very many.
Yeah, I think there's 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
Well, I mean, there were some that came into being as a result of our ADU amnesty program. And there have been some that came through when we did the code change as a use by right versus the conditional use process, which I think we had, you know, maybe 3 or 4, but I mean, it certainly didn't take off the way that
what we had hoped.
And envisioned.
Yeah, in the town, it's, you know, we're pretty flush on money right now. I mean, most businesses try to have 18 months to 2 years of reserve. I mean, I think we're tipping close to 5 or 6 million in our reserves.
Well, we've got some big projects coming down the line.
Right, but are they projects
And
that
new shops, and once we get new shops, then as someone, I think Russell stated this last building, this lot here would be the perfect place for that.
right? A
multifamily.
new shop doesn't help with the housing.
Well, if these leave, if this land is vacated,
That's one nice
then
building
it's
site.
a great
Yep.
spot for.
Yep, for sure, for sure.
And we can put some of that money towards housing.
And I just wanted to let the planning commissioners and all those people on YouTube that are listening that
Your followers?
yeah. So 18 months, I mean, if you were to come through with a new commercial building and you're not going to be involved in any kind of subdivision,
sorry, I shouldn't
you know,
say-
it's
sometimes
not
it's
going to
quicker.
take 18
Yeah.
months. Yeah, I mean, that only requires one visit to the planning commission.
Right.
You know, we meet once a month. If you have a complete application, that really helps,
Yeah. And
you know, fast tracking
Yeah, I'm
stuff.
not putting any blame on anybody or how long it takes. It
No,
takes what it
I
takes.
just wanted to
right? Yeah,
correct what
Yep.
you said.
That's good. 'cause
So, I
I'm
mean, if you're
thinking
going to do a
subdivisions, yeah.
subdivision, that requires, you know, depending on if it's a minor or major, you know, the major is going to come twice to planning commission and once to board. So that's definitely going to
But if people
make the
know,
process longer.
if people know what we're thinking and what we're
Mhm.
planning, we're going to have less people fighting us on less stakeholders fighting and arguing about what's happening with the town. Because if they know we're thinking 10, 50 years out, because we want to make this last and work, then maybe we can get some more people to jump in and help out. I mean, there's there's people up here that'll build stuff, but they don't want to deal with the hassle and the nightmares and the fighting with everybody.
It's
And
super
Very
expensive right
expensive.
now.
right, the expense is going to come down as soon as Japan and or China and
40%, I heard.
Canada are allowed to ship stuff back to the United States. Our costs will start coming back down. When our labor gets back to work in the factories, costs will come down. Right now, everything's blowing out because nobody's in the factories doing any work.
And I mean, I can't tell you how many calls I get, oh, I've looked on your website, I've seen the downtown plan, we see what your vision is. And, it took us overhauling our code to make these changes so that it's not just a vision, and
Right.
it's some things that we can say, it's not only our vision, but, our code now mirrors the end result is XYZ,
Right.
That's what, so in my experience, that's one of the best things, either working at the city manager's desk or having clients who are large developers. You'd be surprised. They have teams of people who do nothing but scour for opportunities. And one of the things they do is go into municipalities or counties' websites, and they're looking at how current are your plans? How does your code tie to your plan? What does this look like? Because what they're trying to figure out is the risk of a potential investment. So they're looking at the scenario and going, how can I predict as I move forward and consider a sizable investment in getting through this process and actually getting done what I need to get done. I'll never forget. I sat down with the president of Brookfield, Colorado, Brookfield Asset Management, which is like on the Forbes list. But I'll never forget. I sat down with him one time and I said, all right, Rick, now that I'm working on the other side of the desk here, I said, what's your biggest concern? And you know what he told me? He said, Wes, I'm concerned about money. Don't get me wrong. I'm very concerned about how much money I spend. But the number one thing that I'm trying to do is it's the predictability. I need a sense that the process and what I'm trying to accomplish has a predictability about it. He said, because when I go into a project, I'm spending seven figures, like multiple seven figures. And he said, in order for me to do that, I'm looking for the right information that's going to help guide me and give me assurance that this is a predictable outcome. Not guaranteed, but predictable. I understand what you're trying to accomplish. I understand the rules around that. There's a fair process involved. The code ties to your plans. Staff's engaged around that, but there's a clear articulated vision. So I thought that was a very important lesson for me to learn.
Yeah.
At some point. So yeah.
Well, and so here's my question, because as the planning commission, our role is to make recommendations based on land use and zoning. So it's not like we could say, oh, these are the plans that we're going to approve. I mean,
No, we don't
how
approve
do we
them.
go about doing what you're proposing and stay within the parameters of what the planning commission does?
Well, one of the things is we did update our zoning, right? Did we do enough? There was a lot of changes. I mean, it was a lot of work.
There's been a couple unintended consequences too.
Yeah, they're always going to be. Somebody's going to find a hole in your plan and take advantage of it, right? It happens. That's what the idea would be for us to give the board more information on what we think and really start thinking and take one lot at a time. Let's take the lot on County Road 8 there, Victoria Village. We could put a parking garage on it where the gas pipe runs through because nothing else can be built there. We could allow the density, as long as they put commercial on the edge of the road and a walkway along the bridge, you could increase that density to a lot more than what it needs to be. And you could do some smaller type houses by the river and then taller buildings coming on the outside, right? So the people by the river, they don't get the views. They get to see the river, but the people in the big towers along the edge of the property above the commercial, people that are walking in say, oh, I can put 150 units here instead of I can maybe get 25 to 100 or 25 to 50 on that lot, right? So we go in there and pre-plan it and say, this is what, if you came and did something similar to this is what we do. Here's the type of buildings we'd like to see there. So when a developer comes in, they can say, oh, this is almost ready to go. There's a few tweaks and changes I need to make. The town board's already approved it, and it goes to the system a lot faster. That's the kind of pre-planning and pre-thinking. We couldn't tell them that's the only thing that could be built there because we don't own the land, right? Eastham, the Clayton cabins, they're nice old buildings. They're not historic. They've been changed a bunch. is that really the best thing on Easton? Would that be a better downtown area, especially if we put in the arts community, the art center over there? I'm sure you all drove up Eisenhower tonight. One brewing company on the side road and two on the highway, and we look like we're in a traffic jam. There's cars everywhere.
Yep.
Right?
So that's parking.
Well, that's why if you have a
And
parking garage,
We think it's gonna change later, but I think we need to take a look at parking. And that was, I'm gonna segue a little bit. That was one of the things that the downtown program can help communities evaluate, like what their parking needs are and where to put them. Because I think that, like you say, people are gonna come back on, cut back on vehicles, but we rely on so many people driving through town. We want them to pull in, and they have to have a place to pull in and park.
but and that's right. So you want that to be the tourists that are coming to spend their money that are driving through town.
Right.
You don't want that to be the
In and
locals
out.
living in town using up all the parking spaces,
Yeah.
right? That's
Well, are you talking about like a parking garage or just in general?
yeah, a parking garage like they have in Winter Park.
Yeah.
Right now that parking garage isn't getting used much. When they put that gondola in, it'll be a paid parking lot,
Yeah, we do need to evaluate where.
right?
There's a lot of locals that park in that garage.
No, I know.
Miller's people have to all park over there.
Yeah.
A lot of them. And
Yep.
if it's gonna snow, they have to park in there.
Right. No, I'm not saying it's not used. It's not used to its capacity, right? So, but those are things that we could start doing differently and thinking
Start looking
forward,
at
right?
whether-
We have it's a nice building. It's a laundromat and it's almost what you want, right? It's got commercial underneath and residential housing on the top, but it's only got one layer of housing.
Yeah. But we don't own the building.
No, right.
But like you say, but if we stick with our zoning, right?
But you could encourage them to build more units on top.
Yeah,
The Fraser Valley Center, the two wings, the middle where Murdoch's is, you couldn't do anything on because the roof, you'd have to change too much of the roof. The two wings, you could add housing on the top of those. Right? Those are two buildings that you could add another 2 or 3 stories on top of.
so one thing from our plan, the comprehensive plan, it does say that
Katie, you did your homework. Kudos.
I did a little bit. Residential development should be designed to avoid ridgeline development and visual impacts to meadows wherever possible. It is critical to the character of the community to maintain the sense of open and scenic vistas. Land uses must also be carefully planned to provide for critical wildlife habitat in sensitive environmental areas. But here and in other places, and as I have said in the past, the views are what people love and when they come into town. So that's also needs to be part of our planning. So
But so far, it's been the major part of our planning. All we've thought about is open space and views and.
well, I don't think that's, of course, I'm an open space view person, but
I
it
understand.
doesn't seem to be the case with everyone else. But that's there now. See something? No, I lost my train of thought. It'll come.
Sorry.
back. That's okay.
No, and that's just it. It's not wrong. I care about the views. I like having a view from my house. Go ahead.
The rendezvous at our last board meeting, was it the last board meeting or the one before? One before, where they did a presentation and they are looking at putting in 164 unit, three buildings between the fire station and the ponds.
With
So
no
that would
commercial.
And they are, of course, it's in the process, in the planning stages, but it would be affordable housing.
And it'd be
supposedly.
55.
Now, I don't know how much we can negotiate on the deed restrictions, and it's just, but that's something that's coming down the pike.
Right. And they're looking at doing that at 55 feet.
Yeah,
height
they
on
are
that.
also
So they
asking for
can
that.
get a lot of people.
Right. And there'd be no commercial,
And that's
right? Which
is-
means all those,
originally,
it's supposed to be commercial along that section, yeah.
in addition, we need housing, but that's one thing I keep seeing happening across the board. And it's been happening is, and what you're saying is they keep building properties to sell to the
So-
current market, but there's no services for anyone.
Well, the,
Be pre-pandemic, try and go out to dinner on a Saturday night, forget it,
right,
you know?
right.
There's no services, there's no, but that just, it's just the vicious circle because there's no housing.
Right, and then there's no people to work,
And
right? I mean,
as the housing increases, and once Clark does get moving, and his complex there that's been on hold, that has a lot of room for restaurants and a lot of services.
right, but it's still
I
not,
think it'll happen.
yeah, it's still
I
not
think
enough.
that will balance out. But the one thought, hear me out on this thought, you know, thinking about how they were looking at a variance for that higher 55 feet. But at that point, I mean, it's kind of in your face, but there's nothing behind it. It's just the hillside behind it right away. It's not,
Well, that's how some people feel about the Meadow over here on the west side. There's nothing behind it but a big mountain. And yet you're worried about the
on
view
the,
corridor.
on what which meadow? Fire Creek
Clark's.
Ranch? Which-
Clark's Meadow.
He has a number of meadows.
Hmm? What I'm-
Cousins Meadow. I
He
think.
has
Yeah.
a number of meadows.
What I'm saying is Cousins Meadow.
Yeah.
Okay,
The,
the original PUD on that had an entire wall of buildings all the way down the highway. That was the original 1980 PUD on that
I
property.
know, but that,
There was a reason why that
that's gone
changed.
now, right? That
was
changed.
modified.
You know, and now there is that huge section of relief between the berms where you look out and you see the ponds and you see the water. But just in the future, maybe something for us to consider if this is that critical part of our character. It's why people come here because they love,
We think people come here for different reasons.
I know, but
You're not a mind reader and I'm not a mind
Yeah.
reader, but I'll tell you the most people I know that come here, they come here to go skiing.
it would be,
And the views are what they see off the mountains, and they
yeah.
go to their hotels and they watch TV, and they go to their condos and they watch TV, and they get up in the morning and they go skiing.
It would be interesting to maybe even conduct a survey
Not just TV.
with that. You know, as including that in one of the surveys to see, because in the past, when there were surveys done, as I recall, that those open space and vista, and I'm sure we've got that information in there somewhere, the old orange book, way back. That's what people loved about when they come here from other places and they're traveling through. And so to take that into consideration when we're looking at,
I mean, that's why I love
areas
living
is
here.
on
I love the open
It goes
spaces.
back
I love the
to-
big meadows.
It goes back to
Right.
fill them up,
Steve Summerall.
I'm not saying fill them up. I'm saying we got to make choices.
fill them up.
Steve Summerall, every single meeting, tried to pound into our heads the importance of allowing height so that you can have taller buildings in smaller sections, which actually preserves the view
Right.
versus having a sprawl.
Right.
And I don't know if you guys
But unless they're all,
forgot about that.
so
but
it's
it-
that.
No,
space requirements
I was there.
between them.
Delightful
But-
Density
or-
was the
Yeah.
video we all watched.
Delightful
Or
Density,
forget-
right, yeah.
What's the other one? Middle.
And he did a lot
Middle
for getting it
housing.
changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He
But-
got ours changed to
And think about
Mhm.
45
think
feet,
about
right?
Ted's
So-
project and how it was 20 units spread out across the entire lot, and then all of a sudden they stacked it. Granted, it's not being built, but they stacked them into. It was half the density, and it was 2 stories, and it looked a lot better, and it allowed for extra parking and extra storage, which
And where
was a
was
big
this?
concern.
Which project?
Ted,
Riverview,
Oh,
Ted
okay.
Carney's.
Okay, yeah.
remember?
But it hasn't been built.
We had a
No,
front
but
row.
I think it was
Yeah.
a result of COVID.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
getting emails every day.
Does he?
Yeah.
So he
trying to-
still wants to make it
Yes.
happen. Good.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff that happened because of COVID. There's a lot of buildings that aren't being finished because of COVID. It happens.
But the, there is a lot of planning that we have to do for in the future. And
Yeah, but it can't.
our
It's
in-house transportation
yeah. Your future's coming like
is
in
right
the next
now. I
in the
know we-
next 12 months.
Yeah.
It's coming.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of people that are looking to build up here because they know we don't have housing and the dirt's still relatively cheap and the cost that we have is cheap. I think you're going to see some developments that were 30 years out. They're going to be here next year.
So with our revised codes and our downtown plan, those in some, just a good degree, address a lot of that guiding
Mhm.
what we want where. So I think that we're kind of ahead of the game on that.
Well, I think,
But-
we're moving in the right direction, but there's always more to do,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Yeah. If I were going to suggest something, I would suggest that your comp plans need some work. There's no doubt about that. And I think the question that has been raised, so what I hear is this, well, I think the community wants this, or the community did want this at some point, or we still think the community wants this, hence the conversations around growth or what may or may not be coming, or density, around what views or open space expectations are around that. So maybe, it could be time to do a little strategic visioning around that. Maybe now's the time to say, why don't we just put a whiteboard up and do some SWOT stuff and talk about how do we coalesce around that? And we go, oh no, this plan's good. But, my question would be, what's your transportation plan look like? I don't know. Maybe that's the one that needs some work. I don't know.
Well-
But the point is it worth getting the group together, both boards together, and kind of going through an exercise like that, and
Right.
and driving some of those discussions. I don't know. I'm talking out loud. It's not.
No, that's exactly, you brought up the roads. So that's one of the things that the town didn't think about in the last 40 years, roads. So there used to be connections that went through Clark's Meadow, Cousins Meadow. It's supposed to be a faster road. Now it's a 25-mile-an-hour road, which is great, right? Because we like it slower.
The Parkway?
The Parkway, thank you. I was trying to think what the name was. However,
Still 35.
is it 35?
And people drive 50.
Yeah. On the other side here, you can't get from the Safeway to County Road 8. There used to be a road that you could do that. They took out 2 intersections and they put condos in there and they put an easement in there. They took out the 2 roads. And there was a route. There used to be routes. When I was a kid, you could ride your bike and you could drive your car to and from the old, before the Safeway was there.
Yeah.
You could drive over that area and get back and forth without going across the highway. Now you have to go onto the highway to get over there.
So it seems like roads, identifying these roads and right-of-ways and securing what we need to make better interconnection should be one of our top priorities. Because if,
Should be.
It should have been.
It should have been.
Start
Well,
with a goal,
We
right?
have that
And
transportation.
because once that's laid out, if people start buying and building, then we don't have the opportunity to say, no, there's somehow secure a road
Well,
easement.
let's look at a little blip in the world of roads. You can't get from Winter Park Ranch to Winter Park, downtown Winter Park, because they chose to take out and not put in one road through Rendezvous, because the people in Winter Park Ranch were afraid that everybody in Rendezvous would be driving through Winter Park Ranch to go to the Safeway. And
Well,
now
there's
what
that
they
one
found out,
couple of
they wish
property
they,
owners, right, that dug in their heels and were like, hell
There-
no, not in my yard.
there was plenty of land they could have bought. They could have put the road in. There was an argument about it. Now the people in Winter Park Ranch wish they had a road so they could get in and get into the town of Winter Park, because when they come out at the stoplight here, they're in a traffic jam for 45 minutes to an hour in the
Right.
morning for ski traffic. Right? So those are the kind of things that we got to think forward on.
Right. And
Uh,
that's us.
And that's why I
the
wanted to have this
county
discussion. Right?
And Winter Park. So if we were to look at, I mean, I don't know, if we're looking at prioritizing because there is so much and something that we want to get a handle on, that we could start sinking our teeth into, would it be roads right off the bat?
Maybe that's part of the meeting discussion. If we have a joint meeting, let's make a priority. Let's see what should be our priorities.
Right.
Right, because it goes back to,
I mean, I don't have all the answers.
Yes.
oh,
Bob,
Bob, you're muted. You're muted.
I asked him to unmute.
There.
Okay. Yeah, somehow I got muted again and I couldn't take it off myself. But
We really do like you though. Go ahead.
I have been wanting to say something, but I couldn't figure out how to unmute myself. But I think that Parnell makes a good point, and I totally agree that COVID has changed this town, and it's changed the world going forward. And if we don't revision what we want our town, our community to look like, then we're just going to get what we get. And I think this is the opportune time to at least start a visioning process for the town, which will ultimately, I think, wind up in a updated or a new town plan, that will take into account a lot of the things that have just been discussed. So I think eventually we're going to come back around to, well, okay, this was all good discussion, but what are we going to do? And I think as a first step, there's a lot of steps to this letter that was submitted as a possible scope of progress that you could make. But I think the early easy win for us would be to take some time right now to reimagine what we want Fraser to look like 10, 20, 30 years from now, or 5,000 years from now, or whatever the Chinese like to do.
Right.
And I do agree with you, Parnell. The Chinese always, they make 5-year plans and they execute their plans, and they got another 5-year plan on the table when that one's getting near the end.
Yeah, and so we do these plans and they're stuck into files and they're put on computers and we don't see them. So one of the thoughts I have is that, and there's a small town up in New Hampshire, I can't remember the town. What they did is they went and put on vacant lots, they put big signs showing what the town would like to have built there. In the old shops, when the town was, I mean, it was a ghetto when I drove through there, but all the windows had what businesses, like Starbucks coffee shop, and I'm just using that because we have one, right? That was painted on the windows. So anywhere where there was a building, we just lost the Dairy King, right, on One Love. When they took that building down, something on that lot that shows what we want to be built there. Jeff or whoever owns it's going to build what he wants to build, but we can start helping people with their imagination of what we want them to build by having stuff in the town when they come in. Here's the town. Here's a model of what we see this town looking like in 100 years, 30 years.
Actually, I think that's an excellent idea.
It doesn't have to be anything fancy. I mean, we don't have to spend $200,000 on a model. It can be things done with pictures and towers and, school project, I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
It could be something done where people put in the buildings that we want to put them in and take photos and stick it in the lot, and that's what it is. And you can make it as fancy as you want or not as fancy.
I mean, I think it's important to include the town board in this discussion because they're the board that allocates the budget and the funding,
Plus, we just make recommendations. I mean,
No, right, absolutely.
in the end,
So would it be advantageous, just thinking out loud a little bit, would it be advantageous to have a joint meeting? We could use this same meeting slot next month. I don't want to presume that town board has nothing else better to do, but if we use this same slot next month, was 1 or 2 different ways we could do it. We could certainly invite the gentleman that put this letter together to come and just explain.
So, and how much is he didn't have any money associated with it?
Well, he just wrote the letter trying to prompt some ideas. I wouldn't
Is
recommend.
this someone that you know?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Right.
gotcha.
Yeah, so
I
I
mean, it
wouldn't
sounds-
recommend making any decision on this. I
Yeah.
would actually say, if you want us to be serious about this, you come explain how this works. You've done this in a number of different communities.
Yeah.
You walk us through what this looks like, and then and only then, if you guys are serious about it and you think it's helpful, because don't waste time and money, but only if you
Right.
think it helps the process, then you get into the other discussion about how much it costs. But I think there's another gentleman I spoke to, I've known, TJ DeLublack, who used to work for, what was the group I told you, they're now in Grand Park. I'm drawing RJ and Associates,
Okay.
and so blah blah blah. There's other people out there that do this kind of stuff, so it doesn't have to be this group. But you could invite this group or 2-3 people to come in and just say, hey, how do you give us your idea about what we should do, and just listen. It's just a listening night, not a decision night, but just we're here to listen. And then the board reconvenes and says, yeah, no, we think this has got merit. No, this is crazy. We're going to do something. We're going to do something else. But I don't know. It's just a thought.
I would, in conjunction with
Yes,
that
ma'am.
idea and meeting together, and like you said, I mean, I dug these out of boxes in my office last night. I think I've got, but I do want a copy of that other plan, versus just looking at it online. But if we could, before that meeting, pull out, because there was a lot of people that spent a lot of time in this
Mhm.
room meeting and putting in their ideas and doing the visioning. If we can take some of that out of these documents and incorporate that on these conversations and say, this is what the community has said in the past.
Mhm.
This is what we have laid out at this time. Okay, is this still what we want? Or do we want to
So-
use this as
so-
a basis and work with it?
So I think that is actually that isn't what your next meeting's about, but I think if you were to decide to go down that path, let's just say it's this firm or some firm like this that does this work for you, they're going to ask you to bring that forward because they're going to want to know what you have done and what was said, but they're also going to want to know what also people see as changes or additions or whatever that is. So that's all like downstream of this particular kind. You do it how you want. It's your call. I recommend that you take a baby step the next time and just simply listen to their way of thinking, because it's about going, okay, so help us understand your thought process before we sign up, because we're not quite sure what we're signing up for. So before we just run down real quick and sign up for it, help you educate us on what this kind of thing, how this is going to meet our needs. So you've reviewed our plans, you've looked at this stuff, you help us understand. Then if you're excited about it, and only then if you're excited about it, then do they set up walking you doing exactly that. Because what they're going to do is then set up strategic meetings where you actually talk about what your plan is, how you got to your plan, why was that your plan, and then how that fits moving forward, what place that has, all that kind of stuff. So does that make sense? Okay. I'm not a fan of slowing stuff down, but I also want to be very deliberate before we go, oh, we're committing to this right out of the gate. I'm always a little hesitant about that.
Because
Yeah.
there's so many parts.
Right. There are.
And to be able to consolidate them and honor and consider
Oh,
what has
sure.
come before.
Oh, it absolutely has to.
Maybe
Sure.
back to the old.
Yeah.
I mean, take our neighbor, Winter Park. Is everybody thrilled with all the buildings and how they got built and what was built so far? I mean, they're beautiful buildings.
it's
Most of
Winter
them are
Park.
beautiful.
So, but that's that's Winter Park style now.
Now, it wasn't 5 years ago.
Yeah. There's not much left of Hideaway Park. There's nothing left of Hideaway Park. Everything
Right.
was, was trees.
So,
Dinos.
and that I didn't come with a bunch of pictures and a bunch of ideas because really I just wanted to come to see how open everybody was to thinking about how can we do this differently than what we've done for the last 40 years.
Yeah.
How can we start thinking forward instead of always, well, this is what we used to do, because what we used to do isn't working.
I mean, I think it's a great idea. I mean, if you take a look at, I got an email from Andy today, he's so excited about the Riverwalk district. I mean, if he could do anything
Right.
individually to
Yeah.
make that happen, he would do it tonight
Yeah.
before
definitely.
midnight, But I think that that's a good conversation to have
That's
in
right.
all of this
That's right.
because
How does that
we
fit?
need the floodplain
Yep.
maps.
Yep.
We need to take a look at the deep utilities over there. If they're not there, that should be a project for this summer, for next summer. I mean, it needs to be shovel ready, that area, and the public investment, or we're not going to get the private investment. We demoed that house on the corner of Doc Susie and the one,
Yeah. What is that?
I can't think what that is. Fraser and Doc Susie.
Yep.
And so that's going to allow for a connection.
Right.
So we can't pave that because the deep utilities aren't in. So
Which
these are
house?
the kind of things that,
Right on the corner.
On this side of the tracks?
no, over
No.
there.
The other side of the tracks.
Yeah, at the end of
So-
Clayton Court.
By the trailer park.
So that's
Right.
going to allow a connectivity.
Gotcha.
That's the kind of stuff that if
Right.
people see that we put the money in the infrastructure, we paid that road, there is connectivity, it's really going to happen
Right.
back there. People are going to invest.
So
What-
do you think about an underpass on Fraser? Or is it Eastham that runs by the elementary school? Which street is that?
Yeah. Eastham's on that side of it.
Leonard?
Coming
Leonard goes
under
down
the
to the
tracks.
school.
Crossing from under the tracks.
Oh,
Because Dennis had talked about that. He said, I always thought that we could do that we could do
Like a walking?
no, for vehicles.
if you
because
try
the
to-
tracks are so much higher there.
Yeah, but they're not high enough. So
Yeah.
At Eisenhower, you'd be 5 feet off the ground, 10
Right,
feet
no,
off
I
the ground.
couldn't
Yeah,
do
you
it at
couldn't do it at
Eisenhower.
Eisenhower.
No. What I'm saying is for do one at Eastham,
Yeah,
for the height requirement and the angle, and I'm off a little bit.
but still.
I haven't measured it out exactly, but we were talking about it decades ago.
Yeah.
That angle of the track coming back, when you get to Eisenhower, that road would have to go up 5 feet and come down over the top of the tracks. Because that's how gradual the train has to go up and then how gradual the train has to go down.
Or if the train just stays at a consistent level, it would be, anyway,
You're talking 50 years there.
yeah. But I'm thinking about
Yeah.
At least 30.
connectivity,
At least 30.
you know, and tying in that.
But it's a
Fraser
great
Historic
idea.
District and,
Well, and I think you have to think about if the Fraser Valley Parkway ever does get constructed, it needs to connect up to that also in some way for more connectivity over to that.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. And to get connectivity, you've got to entice people with, why would I let a road go through my property? Why would I want to build employee housing instead of building $1 million house?
well, you know, and again, these incentives that we created, I think people take them for granted now that they ask for more, our developers, but they're significant. Those cost savings are really significant. So maybe, I don't know, I haven't looked to see how we present that, if that's just how it is, or if there's a true mention of, this is how, these were the actual costs, here are the incentives for building these smaller units. I don't know.
You know, a lot of the
That's
clients,
in there on our website.
a lot of the clients that I talk to, they're willing to put in money. They're willing to put their money where their mouth is about getting better employees, having better facilities, right? So if there's a way for them to help add in and build the community they want to build, and they can see the vision we see, we might get more people than we think to actually help put in money to build the employee housing. Instead of it just falling on a few people, it's the people that have the money. Most of the people up in Rendezvous and Grand Park, they have excess money. What they want is a nice place to live, and they want to have nice people where they live, right? And they want to have nice businesses to go into.
I mean, the town board adopted that housing policy with some incentives, and we've had no traction on that. And I probably talk to different people every other week about those things.
Yeah.
And it's whatever. It's not enough. It's not the right timing, or I don't know what.
You think it's a lot of money, 25, 30,000 for an incentive. Clark got 300,000 extra, 400,000 extra for his houses. His condos were supposed to be in the 349 range. They're selling at 800,000. Right? So $25,000 to build employee housing
Yeah.
is
So
not
when
enough.
You look at, well, they're gonna sell at 350, now they're at 800, it's like, so why does he need any incentives from us? He's making a boatload of money.
Why would he build employee housing?
But it's not employee housing.
No, that's what I mean. Why would he build it then?
Exactly, that's
Oh.
true.
Right?
He has
If he can,
employees.
yep, he's got housing for him.
Yeah.
His employees got
that's
places to stay.
Kind of why we need to look at our regulations and try to be a little tougher on getting employee housing as a mandate.
From who? Just the
I don't know.
developers? Just the new people that are building new houses, and the
Well, for
3,000
one, in
people
here,
were
it does
short?
talk about incorporated as a part of an incorporation.
Well, I know, but the way we've done it in the past, the last 30 years, it's been, oh, if you're going to build a new house or a new project, you have to build employee housing.
Well, but nothing's been mandated that we track anyway, but it's worth looking at because we do.
I mean, I think you had a good idea, Katie, about maybe after we do this SWOT analysis in conjunction with the town board, is going back and looking at what the people said. Because I'm reluctant right now to go back out to the community,
Oh, yeah. so
especially now
try
during
and give us
COVID,
feedback.
to try to get any input. You know, I feel,
I think we should look at it in conjunction. Well, I mean, we could have the presentation.
yeah,
Yeah, let's just
But-
listen to the presentation,
but-
see if
Right.
that jars something. It may not, we may want to go a different path, but
Yeah.
at least let it kind of jar us and, or give us something to consider and wrestle with. Is this the best way to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish? There may not, we may want to look at a couple different people, you know, when it's all said and done, about helping us engage around that. But I really think you do want someone to help facilitate your conversations,
Yeah.
someone who's got tools in their toolbox, whether they're survey tools or whether they're, facilitation tools, just a number of tools to help you kind of pull stuff forward and go, now let's create a roadmap for where we want to be. But it's going to be like, steps, kind of getting there. So, yeah.
And the idea is we don't make decisions. Be perfectly clear to all the people out in the world.
Yeah.
We don't make decisions. We just give ideas, right? Or we double check plans to make sure. Right,
Yeah,
recommendations.
exactly.
So my thought was we don't have to do all the public involvement. We don't have to have them come into every meeting and because we've done that. We have all those insights, right? We spent hundreds of hours in the last 10 years working on it. We'll bring them back to the surface and then say, here's what we're thinking, and then let them come in and talk about it instead of it's always no more growth. That's what you hear from everybody in the town because they think they can keep it small and it's just not going to happen.
That's changing. The old people are moving away. The old ones that have been here a long time.
Yeah, and the
Just
young
can't take the
people that have been
crowds
here a long
anymore.
time are getting old and we're
Well,
here.
and the young people that are here know that we need it because, my daughter's the perfect example. She told me years ago, she's, Mom, we need development. So people like me can afford to live here.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the highest water bills either in the state. I think hot sulfur might beat us, but Tabernash, and that's because we don't have enough users on the water system.
Or there's no mill levy
Right.
to help out with that.
Right.
So maybe that's
Well, there's-
maybe that's a good discussion to have.
Yes, right. There's lots of things that we could discuss.
Yeah.
But figuring out where we want the density and how we want to put people into the town is, and yes, Steve is in my head all the time with the towers, because then you can have one tall building, 3 short buildings, 1 giant tall building, and you still get to see the views as you drive by, right?
So what all would you like to have on your agenda for this joint meeting? What would be your request as the planning commission to recommend to the board to have on the agenda for the meeting? We can certainly look at this proposal, but actually get a
Yeah.
presentation. Is there anything else that night you feel, I think that's going to be a lot, to take in, but is there anything else while you're there in a joint meeting, whether from the board's perspective or from the other commissioners' perspective that you think would be worth tackling?
Well, if there's, if we could get some idea of what the densities could be in 30 years or 10 years even, if we can't see that far forwards, know what the pain points are still in the other ski towns would be a real good thing. I mean, we know our pain points, right? No housing, roads are congested, we have good servers, just not enough of them, not enough restaurants and shopping centers and facilities to go to, right? We're still going to Denver for half the stuff we need. So,
Does the Association of Ski Towns have some little metrics out there, Catherine, that you know of that we could
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, so see if we can do a little digging and just see if there's some general trends or general concerns or general issues among the ski towns. So we'll do a little digging and see if we can maybe have that ready for the agenda. Okay. All right. Okay.
So that's it. That's all I was
Yeah.
wanting to have a meeting for.
And if there are some key pieces, maps that we have that are just kind of buried for zoning or something, that rather than
Well, that's what I'm talking.
everything that could just come in like
The
just
point.
to remind people that, so this is some of the work that's been done.
Well, those are all good. What I'm saying is we stop thinking about our zoning and we start thinking about what we need and figure out the zoning after the fact.
Yeah.
So maybe we do the same thing. Maybe we have a list of, like Catherine's done, she's put together a list of all the reports we have when they were done. Just maybe she had a couple sentences behind some of them so we can look at those and just kind of have a caption then so people understand what the context is. So your staff memo, the staff memo is probably going to look similar to what you see here. We'll go back and revisit it. We'll add some stuff, maybe clean some stuff up, but it's going to look pretty close or, pretty similar to what you have here, except we're going to have the expectation that this group actually take what they put in writing and actually come ready to make a presentation. It may be on Zoom or something like that. But,
This is Bob Ganussi. I've got a question for you, Wes.
Yes, sir.
I'm back to this document that you provided from your friend at DTJ.
Yes, sir.
I've written hundreds of these proposals and reviewed about this many in my career. And what I would say is there's nothing unique about what he put in his letter here. It's pretty much boilerplate.
Yep.
And there are lots of firms out there that can do this same thing.
Don't disagree.
So with the fact that this is such a generic proposal,
Uh-huh.
and not even really a proposal, it's just a generic kind of scope of potential work that
Sure.
he's suggesting, I would like to see them come and give a little presentation and flesh this thing out a little bit, make it real for us, and associate some costs with these things, you know, before we go down the road of committing to a,
Absolutely.
basically the role they're going to play that's invaluable, if you really want to dig into it, is they're going to facilitate this plan happening in a punctual fashion and summarizing everything into a document that we can act on.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah. And you're right. I mean, there's a number of firms who can do this. So I don't want to, insinuate otherwise. So, I mean, you can always actually put an RFP together and start even further back down the road if you want to and go that route. But it's.
Well, I don't know that that's necessary. We put an RFP together right now, but I'm thinking if they're willing to come when we have the joint session with the board, the town board, that then everybody gets a chance to kind of dig into their thought process and get comfortable with them and either say, yeah, we want to get a proposal from you guys, or say, well, you know, let's shop around a little bit. But I think it would be worthwhile if they're willing to do it.
Okay. Well, we'll see. Yeah, I don't disagree. Okay. I'll engage in that way.
Prior to, is it appropriate to send them the links that Catherine shared with us of these existing recent documents?
They've dug through, I mean, they haven't read all of them page,
Yep, right.
left to right, but they have they've combed through your website and tried to pick up the best they can your plan. So, yeah.
Because if they can, so in that, if they can make it relevant
Right.
to our needs,
Sure.
that would be good.
All right. Are we good?
That's it.
Okay.
Any other business?
So this is just for Kath, thinking about the open space. Our signs are information signs. If you haven't walked the trail, they are dying.
They're what?
You mean the
They're
one with the
fading.
frog on it?
They're cracking.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're,
Yeah,
so it's just food for thought. Those need to be replaced
Right.
sometime.
that's in the Fraser River Corridor Master Plan recommendations.
Okay, good, wonderful. What else was I gonna ask about?
So this is Bob Ganussi again. If we're kind of off that topic and open for a new question or a new topic, I have a question. Does anyone have an idea where we are on our public forums for entertainment venues this summer? Are we going to be able to have music in the park again? Are we going to be able to the Thursday night events at the Rendezvous Event Center? You know, what always draws a lot of our Fraserites, I mean, and Winter Park residents. It's a great place to mix and mingle, and we really missed it this past summer. So I'm hoping that some of the entertainment, outdoor musical entertainment, will be back in some form or fashion this summer.
Sarah, discuss that?
Sure. I'm moving forward with Picnic in the Park, with the hopes that, the restrictions are going to be considerably lifted. All of our events in Fraser are outside, so it makes it pretty easy to be safe. So yeah, I've started working on booking bands and getting some swag for the event. So yeah.
Good.
At least we'll have that.
I can tell you, everybody that I talk to that lives up here in our valley, I get them asking me questions all the time. Well, do you think we're going to have music in the park or music in events this summer? Or are we going to be all sitting at home again? I said, I don't know. So here's my chance to ask and find out.
Yeah,
So
and
I'm sorry,
sorry.
Sarah. So Sarah and I were on a call with the county, was it last week, Sarah, or the week before last, talking
Yeah.
about outdoor events. And they're definitely, I mean, of course, they're being cautious, but they're definitely engaging both Winter Park and Fraser around what special events look like, especially those that are going to be held outside. So we made it very clear, the two managers made it very clear that to the county that there's a lot of interest and a lot of pin-up interest and demand for these things, and that we would like to have a coordinated and very seamless process for getting those permits, not going event by event. So anyway, Sarah is gracious to on our end to kind of to head that up, but I think everybody's moving forward with those expectations that at a minimum, at least the outdoor events are going to be moving forward, and quite probable a lot of the indoor events are too. We should have more information from the county probably after spring break about what the levels on the dials will be here. But the numbers that I've been tracking over the last 2 weeks have been very encouraging. So yeah.
Sounds like the Rendezvous Event Center too is going to be hosting some concerts. I think they're booking the Jazz Festival and the Blues Fest. And
Just go look at history.
I'm not sure about the
It's the
Thursday night.
Roaring
What's
20s.
that?
It's still up in the
Is
air.
it still up in the air?
Yeah.
Jane says that's still up in the air.
Yeah, they had one of the chamber meetings just a couple weeks ago, and they weren't committing to anything.
Not yet.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Back to outdoor entertainment that we were looking at, or that you guys were looking at, some sort of a special little district where the restaurants.
Entertainment district?
Entertainment districts.
Yeah. Antoinette, can you give a quick update on that, please?
Use your microphone. There you go.
So, yes, Sarah and I have been kind of piggybacking on this a bit, trying to really think about, can we do this? And I think this fits right into this conversation tonight.
Mhm.
The way our downtown is currently set up, I don't even think it's feasible for us to have an entertainment district at this point in time. You have to have in order to do it, you have to have 20,000 square feet of liquor license establishments within an entertainment district. And you have to be able to close down an area and you're not allowed to drive cars through an entertainment district. So currently, really, you wouldn't be able to cross Highway 40. So that leaves downtown Frodo on its own, and there's only one liquor license holder over there, which is not 20,000 square feet, because there has to be a minimum of 2 liquor license holders in a promotional association. It's a little confusing to explain it all, but and then if you look at the other side of the highway, you'd almost have to have all of our liquor license holders, which would be, I think, all the way from Adventures Decanted, Fisher's, the winery, the 2 breweries, would have to compromise an entertainment district. And in order to activate the space, what that means is it's kind of like a special event. You close everything down, you contain the area, you can walk in between the establishments for entertainment, which is the purpose of it. And the challenge being, how do you close down and contain that entire area and close down all those streets and get from all those venues and in between?
So it'd be Fraser Avenue.
Fraser Avenue
have to-
and potentially Eisenhower if you wanted to go over to Fraser River
Right.
Beer.
Yeah.
So at this
That
point in
doesn't work.
time,
Why doesn't that work?
I just don't really know that it can really happen.
Yeah.
But I think if we eventually did, we're able to have that vision for the downtown area and the Fraser River District, and potentially even Grand Park if he eventually builds his, whatever down there, his village. I do think it's in the future for Fraser, but right now, I don't foresee it being able to be viable at this time.
And
So something
Antoinette
we should have
has,
on our radar, and as we grow and have more establishments,
And
we
what
definitely should have it on our radar, but
Absolutely.
maybe just a
Our
little
Riverwalk.
premature.
Yeah.
Well,
Definitely.
you could do it shutting down all the roads. You would have to use the railroad and the highway as your main points of access. And the only way you could get into Old Town is to go back down underneath the railroad crossing and come down that 73 and into Mills Avenue, right? So that would be I guess you could leave the back end of Eisenhower open on railroad so they could come in there and go over Eisenhower. You could block off enough roads to do it. It's just people would feel it very inconvenient.
It would.
I mean, a good example, Antoinette and and Sarah have had this discussion is, in Winter Park is Cooper Creek Square.
Mhm.
So it's an area where they have a lot of liquor licenses. There are no cars there. I mean, it's kind
They
of
have a-
almost
they
the
have a-
perfect
yeah.
setting
You
for
just
that.
block it off and people
you
just
know?
build in
Big
between.
courtyard
Yeah.
where they can set up a stage. I mean, it's
Mhm.
really, that is really what you envision for an entertainment district, or like a downtown that has a main road through it that you could block off each end of the road, something like Steamboat, you know, and you could have like your downtown, you know, block party or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and it's not to
So
say
that proto block really would be
would be
ideal
ideal.
for it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the best
depending on
time to
what the new developer decides
best
to
time
put
to
in.
test it is right after the ski season, right? See if the locals like it, because they're pretty much wandering around with liquor in their hands anymore anyway, because you know it's curbside service. You know, that's what
Well,
they're
and I
doing.
This is
think-
something you know from firsthand observation.
Yeah.
I live right across from
I just-
Fisher's
Yeah,
Bar.
good
Yeah,
job. Just
exactly. how it
asking,
works.
just curious.
And I will say too, with all of the changes in the liquor laws this year, there could be some pretty big changes that stick around permanently that could really change all of this.
Like
So, you know,
going to a place,
we
getting
don't
your
know.
food, putting your liquor in your cat with a straw in it, and driving home. I mean, that was how much of that sticks around.
Mhm.
I'll be
Right.
curious. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, anyway,
Yeah, it's weird stuff.
that's weird. It's weird stuff.
All right.
Oh. One other thing, if you think about future, is locating a school. I heard that, I think I heard that Fraser Elementary is they're looking at 40 additional students once COVID's all over, new families that have moved up here. and trying to
Well,
get here.
that's a sore subject because we had 20 acres that was being donated, but the school board decided they wanted cash instead.
So was that over here in the Meadow for Clark's property?
Uh-huh.
Well,
Yep.
that's the school board, because they just wanted to keep the school in Granby.
Let's not talk about schools tonight, I think.
Okay.
We need, I think that, at least I'm reaching the end of my views and everybody has
Yep.
their own opinion on
Okay.
that, so
Great, we'll
I
leave
don't want to
schools
open
out.
up that can of worms.
Okay, fair enough.
Um,
And it's late, it's almost,
yeah.
we haven't been here
Anyone
this long as a group for a long
Else
time.
for open forum? Future agenda items? Catherine?
I guess we'll work on
Is there any
this for the next one.
applicants coming in?
We did receive an application. It may be ready for the October 28th planning commission meeting. That's what we're working through right now.
The which one? October?
You just said October.
I said October?
Yeah. Wow.
I
that
had
is
a grant
whole-
application due
that is a
today
long
and my
lead time.
desktop died yesterday, so. Not October. We'll meet in April,
We'll
April
see.
28th.
It's, the application's somewhat incomplete. We're working through some.
Yeah, we're working through it.
One
But
of
we're
those.
hopeful to have something.
We are very hopeful.
Okay. Anyone else? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Got it.
All those in favor?
I-
Thank you guys for
Thank you,
joining.
everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Share my thoughts.
So, can I have a hard